as we all know, we never know how to start these, but we just press play, we just press record, and we just jump right into it. What's up, everyone? It's Wednesday. I think you know what time it is. It is time for the weekly Tito Speaks podcast, where I record these private memos that I keep to myself and I do not post anywhere. This is just for my own reference. And I don't assume that anyone's listening to this because it's not public. This is just for my own personal reference on the computer that I keep on my external hard drive. And I hope that it doesn't get seeped out to the internet because that's the last thing I want. So if this happens to be posted on the internet for some reason, I'm just speaking to myself. So let's hope that it's not posted to the internet because, that was never intended. But how's it going, guys? And by guys, I mean myself. You're all my mental frame of reference for this. I've been thinking about a few things. First of all, it's Christmas season. And Christmas season always gets me a little bit nostalgic, And I feel like that's a big thing of culture now in the media is like we're very nostalgic about things. And I was just looking to pop in. I was debating doing the podcast first or watching it's that whole time management thing. But I wanted to bang out the podcast early in the day, talk to you guys a little earlier in the day as well. It's December 8th, and, just had to put that out there. But I wanted to watch Lord of the Rings. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, that is a yearly, a weekly, a daily tradition. We watch Lord of the Rings on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. We cram it all in. Best trilogy of all time. Do not question me. Don't challenge me on that. Don't try to challenge me on it because it just won't work. No, you know what? To be fair, there's a good case for a lot of top tier trilogies out there. But Lord of the Rings, come on. You're fooling yourself if you don't think it's at least top one of everything. You could argue Star Wars. I love Star Wars too, by the way. I love all Star Wars. But that's a whole other topic. I don't want to get into that quite just now. But I think the big debate would be people saying either Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. But Lord of the Rings is just like, on every level, is just an achievement. It's that thing that, I think it's the way that people felt when they first saw Star Wars back in the 70s and 80s, how people feel about Lord of the Rings in the early 2000s. And then people in my generation would also argue Harry Potter as those are kind of the neck and neck sci-fi franchises, but Lord of the Rings was more of a singular story. Harry Potter is a singular story too because it's all continuous. But Lord of the Rings felt like one A to B goal. It's technically one movie if you think about it. It was all filmed and kind of the production of that was just a major, a 12-hour movie basically. But I'm getting away from the point. The whole point is that I love everything about Lord of the Rings. It just makes me feel good inside. From the score, Howard Shore's amazing soundtrack. I listen to the score for Fellowship of the Ring on a daily basis in my daily life. I'm that type of person. I don't know if I mentioned it on a past podcast, but I'm the kind of person that listens to movie scores. I like to be very narcissistic and make everything about me and make every moment very cinematic, like it's through my eyes because I'm the most important person that there is in my little world. But, totally natural behavior. But I just wanted to watch it again because it's funny, I say holiday season to watch Lord of the Rings, but it honestly works every time. It just is an added bonus that it's during, you get to be cuddly by the fireplace or whatever. I don't have an active fireplace, but you know what I mean. Curling up in a blanket, putting it with your indoor bonfire, in your bedroom like most people have, and just pop in the VHS, pop in the what's it called? What's the other one? The Betamax. Pop in your what's the big old vinyl record one that they had, pop in your laser disc, and just watch a good old time, because I love Lord of the Rings. It just makes me feel so good. The acting, the set, like literally just everything. It's paced so well. Like 3.5 hours. Like I can't watch the theatrical versions either. I have to watch the extended version, because when you pop in the extended version and you get used to watching that for years, it becomes the norm. And then like for me to watch the theatrical, and the theatrical is, for those of you that don't know, that's the original version that came out in theaters. But when it came out on DVD, they released the extended cut, which added like I don't know, like almost half an hour of footage on each of the movies, something like that. It was enough that, and I'm so used to watching the extendeds now that it doesn't feel right if I watch a theatrical. Like it feels like it's incomplete. And I don't know what it is about. I'm guessing general audiences wouldn't typically go to a movie that's 2 hours is already like asking a lot for like general audience, I feel. But I feel like it's a unanimous thing among Lord of the Rings fans. Unless, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, if you're of the side that you think the theatricals are better. One argument, this is like me getting into like the deep cuts now for whoever is a fan, like, and if not, you're just kind of mindlessly listening. But again, this is a private recording and it just stays on my hard drive, and it never sees the light of day. So again, I'm just talking to myself here. But the theatrical for Two Towers, the second movie, is arguably, I think, of the theatricals, the most necessary in terms of like the amount of cuts that they had. Because the one thing I would say, and it's not even that like I dislike it, but it's something that I do think about when I watch extended, is that the stuff with the Ents, I think it could have been cut back a little bit, and I think the theatricals did that. As much as I love the Ents, I do love. Who doesn't love a good old slow talking tree? It's the most riveting thing of all time. But the whole plot line of Merry and Pippin with the Ents is like it could have been slightly. I think they could have shaved off a little bit of that. Like I don't think it has to be fully gone, but it definitely is the closest thing to feeling like a lull in between the pacing of the movie. But otherwise, it's like, top tier, flawless, S tier, A tier, platinum tier, whatever tier you want to call it. It's goated. Lord of the Rings is the best trilogy of all time, and this is coming from someone who loves the Toy Story trilogy, the Indiana Jones trilogy, the original trilogy of Star Wars. I do like the prequels too, and I might as well bring it up. I don't even know why it went but you know what? I will. The Hobbit movies, they're sufficient. They do their job. But the thing is that, for those of you that don't know the background of the Hobbit movies, they were always more... It actually was produced the opposite way that the original Lord of the Rings trilogy was, where Lord of the Rings had 3 books of source material to reference, and they had to shave off some of that. But they went the other way, where The Hobbit was actually a children's book that J.R.R. Tolkien wrote first, and it was just like, it's funny, it's a children's book, but it is still like a chapter book, like no pictures, unfortunately. Besides, I believe some dwarf text in there and stuff like that, like a dwarf script, and what other languages would there be? Black speech. I don't think they have the orc speech in the Hobbit movies, or do they? And another thing I didn't know was if goblins and orcs are the same or different. I know that Uruk-hais and orcs are different, because Uruk-hais are like the WWE wrestler MMA version of the orcs, and the orcs are kind of like the guys that'll rob you in an alleyway, like the guys that killed Bruce Wayne's parents. Like that's the vibe of regular orcs. They're just scum of the earth. But the thing with the Hobbit trilogy is that it was, like, to quote Bilbo Baggins, like butter spread across too much bread. Like, where there was only a one book of source material, but they filled in so much. And it's funny, like I follow a lot of meme pages, and one meme I saw literally just before the podcast too, I wasn't even thinking about this, but it just came to mind, was I saw this meme kind of like going in line with what I'm saying. So there is like an elf character. I think it's Toriel, the one that Evangeline Lilly, who plays Wasp in Ant-Man, like she plays this elf character in the Hobbit trilogy, and she doesn't exist in the books. And I just remember it was in the meme format that I saw on IG of, if you guys remember Infinity War, where it shows Wanda Maximoff with Thanos, and she's like, "You took everything from me," and it has Toriel's face on it. But it says that she, I think it has a quote from her in her movie saying something about like, I don't know, just imagine some quote of hers, and then on Thanos' face you just see J.R. Tolkien like smoking a pipe, and he's all like, "I don't even know who you are," and I'm like, yeah, that totally made me audibly nose breathe at a rapid rate. I did chuckle at that. I had to give that a little like, because yeah, he didn't make that character, and it was like one of those things where I don't think there was any romance in the original Hobbit book, but I think they felt the need that they had to have that. So, you know, it's one of those Hollywood things that I think the obligatory things that they think make movies compelling. But I honestly think that even when I heard that it was going to be two movies, I was a little like, ooh. And if you remember back then, this would have been before 2012, like when I was in high school. I remember that Guillermo del Toro was signed on to direct the original one. But like the original, like an early production of The Hobbit. But he dropped out like last minute, and Peter Jackson kind of had to hop on like partway through. And I don't know if it's that he fully redid it, but you can kind of see the comparison, and it's not even like to discredit him, but if anything, it shows what you can do with a lot of time versus not as much time. Because I think he even admits that he didn't have nearly as much time to work on this trilogy as he did the originals. And the original ones, I think they were working on it since like the late 90s. So like they casted like 2-3 years before they even started production. Because, you know, like they got to sit with the source material and like build up this production and like the set design and everything. Because there's so much practical effects. And well, this is a whole other discussion too. But, and I did a skit on this way back when I was a wee lad. If you guys remember the movies with the actors doing their own stunts. But it kind of like goes in line with the thing of like practical effects and things being in camera. Which I think there is a case to be said that there's something, there's a quality to seeing something in real life when it comes to practical effects. Like let's say it's a set or an animatronic that it adds like to it, you know? Like when you see that something's really tangible and it's there, you can tell, your eye can tell. And I think that there's just a smart way to use CGI where it's like you only use, not to say the bare minimum, but like the most realistic amount that you could do. Not realistic, but like everything that you possibly couldn't achieve with animatronics or like practical effects, do in CGI, and then like the rest doing in practical. But it's funny, like people had that mentality for all the 2000s after the Star Wars prequels, and you know, Lord of the Rings is part of that too, where it's like a heavy amount of practical effects. In comparison, I think people would compare that the prequels, like, oh, like, you know, Lucas, you know, the big rub on the prequels is that George Lucas was he was already this like huge, you know, juggernaut in Hollywood, so no one could. It felt like he was surrounded by yes men when he made the prequels, and no one really challenged him, and that was the big thing about it. So you have an unfiltered version of what George Lucas's vision of the prequels is, but you don't really have a second opinion like he had when he did the original trilogy, because he only directed the very first movie, A New Hope. Or if you're a Star Wars purist, you just call it Star Wars. You don't call it A New Hope. That's not what it was called when I was a kid. But, you know, he changed it to that, guys, and it's George Lucas's creation. So, well, now it's Disney's. He sold it. But the thing with the Star Wars, like, prequels is that he obviously, you know, George Lucas has always been about the advancement of technology, and he never wanted to like linger on the past, which is like a whole point of like I think what people have against the new movies. And I can you've seen it all online. I don't have to reiterate everything people have said about the new movies. But the thing I find so funny, and this all ties back to my thing of like nostalgia, and I think with Star Wars in general, and then a lot of franchises, is that the thing is that people like it's interesting how the generations change, and then the demand of what you find nostalgic on the whole in the culture changes. Because if you guys remember, just a few years ago, people my generation, like roughly people who roughly grew up in the realm of when the prequels came out, you would remember us being kids at that time, and everyone like all the older people, like like you were shamed if you like it. Unless you were, the kids liked it though. The thing is, like, we liked but we were always bashed for this. And I would see, I remember seeing an episode of Spaced, if you guys have seen Edgar Wright's show. And it's like with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, like before they did Shaun of the Dead. And it's like a movie geek thing. It's kind of like Community, like a pre-Community kind of vibe, like following these geeks. This sitcom from the late 90s, early 2000s. But they're like representing that time and like that generation. They were like bashing the prequels in that show. So it's like this whole thing that it's like, the stupid kids, like, just want to buy toys. All you kids like Jar Jar and stuff like that. And I don't even think that was a thing. Like, I don't think there's probably like a decent amount of people in my generation, but I think the majority of people who grew up realized how stupid Jar Jar was. And that was like just like a childhood thing. But like I never really even loved it. Like for me, if I'm being totally honest with the prequels, what I loved was Darth Maul. And the big thing is that he didn't have to read any of George Lucas's dialogue. Because if you guys know anything about the whole part of the thing that is a crutch to the prequels is, the wooden acting. Some of the dialogue doesn't translate well. And Lucas, again, he didn't have yes men around him. Or he had yes men around him, I should say. And he didn't have people challenging his opinion. And he kind of just filmed it how he filmed it. People give a lot of flack to Hayden Christensen, obviously. But, this is that whole thing that I'm trying to get into about nostalgia, is that it's interesting now, is what I'm trying to say, that our generation now is the one that's like more predominant. I wouldn't even say predominant, like even younger than us in the culture. Like in general, we're old enough that the stuff that we liked as kids, which is the prequels, which we remember being hated, is all of a sudden being like almost unanimously loved on the internet all of a sudden. But there's this half kind of thing where it's like memes, like, like I follow a lot of the prequel meme stuff, and I want to ask people that can hear this, like, what level is it that people genuinely love it, and what level is it like of people that like, they meme it and stuff? Because there's like, every single line in the prequels has been made into some kind of meme. Like if you've seen all the Anakin and prequel memes, like all those IG pages or wherever on the internet that you peruse your memes, like it kind of seeped into, like now there's this thing to want to see Hayden Christensen again and want to see Ewan McGregor again in those roles. And it's interesting to me that just a few years ago, like that was like not what people wanted. And that's part of why the Star Wars fan base is so freaking divisive, is that Disney thought, and people thought they knew what they wanted with the new movies, because these past ones were supposed to be the ones that, this is gonna fix it. This is gonna fix it. But it's interesting how it's just cyclical. Like people are just never happy. It's like or maybe the people that did secretly like it didn't want to announce that they liked it until all of a sudden it becomes cool to like it again. Because it's just interesting. Like I would admit that, okay, my thing is that I always thought Revenge of the Sith was a genuinely like great movie. But it was just, some of the acting wasn't the best. But the thing with like the prequels in general is that I think they have very good, like the story, like the outline is amazing. Like the basic outline of like what happens in it is amazing. It's more of like the very microscopic level of dialogue and acting that could be fixed. Because like George Lucas is always ahead when it comes to technology. He always wants to do that. But people started to think that was the reason that they aren't good. And I think that kind of like stopped being an argument. I think there's a good amount of people that say that. Okay, I would say that Attack of the Clones, the the CGI was, that's when he really amped up from Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones. You could tell there's way more green screen, but it really got refined, and I think it still looks great. Like in Revenge of the Sith, like stands out in terms of CGI, like till this day. Like General Grievous, come on, like that literally is like some of the best CGI till this day that holds up. Another one that I would say that I randomly thought of in that era is Davy Jones and Pirates, the Pirates movies. That was like another like amazing, like still holds up. Like I watched it recently, or like some, in the last few years, and I just still like, it looks like nearly flawless. Like it's great. But I don't think, like, I think people like to hone in on specific things to criticize, because like Disney as like a huge corporation and everything, they like look at, they try to think of like what's bankable, and they thought that just doing these surface level things, like basically Force Awakens, like you can't deny, when you watch the whole saga of movies, you can't deny that watching that back to back, that Force Awakens is like very, very, and it's like, it's like they say it's an homage, and I would say that, like, I'm not mad at it, but it's just very almost blatantly like mirroring the original movie, Star Wars, not A New Hope, the original one, just called Star Wars for everyone born before 1977, I guess. But the other thing is that even it kind of seeps into today. Like there's still examples of that. Like I'd say the biggest one happening, it's very relevant right now, is the Spider-Man movie, is No Way Home. I keep accidentally calling it Far From Home. Like, they're all like similar titles. But the newest one, and the big thing is that the villains are coming back from all the past franchises. So we got the Sam Raimi villains. We got Doc Ock. We got Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, like I just said. We got Jamie Foxx as Electro in like a updated version. And it's interesting to me how, like, I don't know, this is like maybe another hot take. It's not like a fully hot take, but I remember a time where no one said, it wasn't until, I'm telling you, it's not until my generation got older that people started to be more nostalgic for the Sam Raimi movies. Like, I think people will acknowledge that the first two, mainly two is like a masterpiece. Like Spider-Man 2, and it's always like mentioned in like top lists of like best superhero movies, is like a great, great, great superhero movie, and like maybe one of the best. But, like back then there was the whole thing of like not knowing, like there's always, no matter what era we're in, we literally just have to learn to appreciate what we have, because no matter what time we're in, there's always going to be something to like, oh, what if they did this? What if they did this? Because like back then, I always wondered about the prospect, before the MCU, like crossing over stuff. And, that franchise flopped 2 different times. Spider-Man 3, argue what you will, like it's not a great movie, like it's all over the place. There's good things in there in Spider-Man 3, but if it wasn't for that Bully Maguire / we used to call him the emo Peter before he became super memed, and now he's Bully Maguire, was like a huge thing. And I follow those memes too, to be honest, and I love them. I honestly love the thing. This isn't even me bash. Like I love it, but it's just, I'm just commenting on how it's interesting that people change what they're nostalgic for. Like when Tom Holland's came out, like no one was like wishing. I think there probably were people that were wishing for Toby to come back, but there was a lot that he didn't do the best as Spider-Man. Like his Spider-Man wasn't as and it's not even like it's the most important thing, but like he's known to be like a wisecracker and stuff like that, right? And like Andrew Garfield's got that right, but I feel like Tom Holland is a good middle between the two, because he plays a good Peter, where you can buy him being more of a geek than you can Andrew Garfield's Peter, but he has enough of the humor to like, have like the mid battle quips, and you can't even don't even say that as like a negative, because that's just that is Spider-Man's character. Don't lie to me. But the thing that's funny is that now there's people in my generation who didn't really read comics or whatever. Watch. Yeah, there's a lot of like the old shows too, but people now view Tobey Maguire's Peter and Spider-Man as the epitome. Like that is what Spider-Man is, and it's its own version, and I love it. But it was never like it wasn't the perfect incarnation, but like it was the childhood one, and it's amazing. Like I love it. But if we're being totally honest, it's not exact to what the comics was. Like there was always room for improvement. That was a big thing that people said about Andrew Garfield that they like, is that he had more of the quippiness as Spider-Man. Oh, and then like there's technical things too, like Spider-Man's web isn't organic. I think they took that from the Ultimate Comics, which is like another reimagining of the comics, because technically Spider-Man always had web shooters. He made his web shooters. He never shot web, and if we're going very accurate, he would have shot it out of his butt. But the Tobey movies made, even I'll admit as a kid, like I wasn't sure either which one was the real thing, because I grew up on those movies too, that I wasn't sure if it was originally organic or if it was the web shooters. But yeah, like in general, I'm hyped for that movie. It's great how like, and kind of trippy to me how like as the generations time passes, things are just viewed differently. Like just like 10 years ago or less, the prequels and the Spider-Man movies weren't talked on such a high tier the way they are now. Like the way it is now is just like, it's the norm to like love the prequels, and it's the norm to love the original, including number 3. People I'm seeing it all over online. Like people love Spider-Man 3, and I don't hate it. And I liked it a bit back then, but dude, no one can deny that Venom was so butchered in that movie. And this comes down to a thing too of people having that nostalgia thing as like nostalgia goggles towards what's actually a good portrayal. Because I will say that Tom Hardy's Venom, character-wise, it's miles and miles and miles better than the Spider-Man 3 Topher Grace version. That was such a miscast. Like as much as I like Topher Grace, shout out Topher Grace, loved you in that 70s show, but it's that's not the one. Like Eddie Brock, like Tom Hardy is, I wouldn't say like exact, but like he's very much closer. And I do like the angle. Like I would have maybe liked if they started with a villain angle and have him have more of a redemption arc, like in the comics, where he becomes more of like an anti-hero to Spider-Man. But Sony wants to make their own franchise, so they make it so that he's a hero right away, the Lethal Protector. But yeah, that one too wasn't it wasn't the best. No, I will say that I probably like Venom 1 better, to be honest. And that's a sad thing to say, because I loved Carnage and Venom as a kid. I'd say that like for villains as a kid, it was the Joker, Mark Hamill's Joker, and then Venom from like, I'd say a mix of like the old Fox cartoon, the 90s cartoon, the one where they're all jacked and boxy looking. The one you think of when you think of the end. Actually, I want to know the 60s one is debatable for being more iconic. No, that is more iconic. But the 90s one is like right up there. I'd say is second for TV portrayals. But yeah, Carnage and Venom, like as a kid, Venom was like huge in the 90s and I'd say early 2000s, because there was like a huge demand. Like I have this debate too, because I'm a comic fan a bit. I fancy I'm a bit of a scientist myself. That if Green Goblin or Venom is Spider-Man's arch enemy, I want to know your guys' thoughts on that, because that's when you know that someone's villain lineup is so good. Him and Spider-Man and Batman have the best villains, period. And I don't know, for Spider-Man, I think I would maybe make a case that Norman Osborn, Green Goblin, is his arch enemy. But Venom, I think, is like he's probably like second, and if not, like arguably first. Between the like, I think it's more. Yeah, I think you got to give it to Norman. And the thing is, if they want to go comic accurate with Norman, and I saw memes about this, people giving Willem Dafoe the waves. If you guys have read comics or watched the old show or anything, all incarnations of Harry and Norman Osborn, they have the waves going on. They have the brush. They perm their hair or something to make it wavy. And I've seen all these memes. It looks like you just see Norman with like the Drake lineup. You got that. You got to get that. You got to get fresh if you're gonna run Oscorp. But yeah, that's one thing that I didn't. When I saw the art for that as a kid, I think mainly because he's white too. I was just like, what? What kind of hair is that? Because like I'd seen people with waves, but I never associated it being on white people, and it was just like, what is what? Like look at the drawing of that. I was just like, what kind of hair is that? Like it just looked weird to me, like being brown and like that. Shout out James Franco in Spring Breakers. Look at all my Shia. Got some of our silly water here on deck. Just enjoying a hard day's work. A relaxed drink after a hard day's work. But yeah, honestly, I still, with all the stuff going on in the world, you still got to take a step back, no matter where you are in your life, and just appreciate the current situation. Because, like, look at this. We literally are at a point in movies where we have a 20 plus movie with TV shows universe that's so interconnected to the point that it's getting, like, it reached arguably its peak, and now it's expanding to the point where it goes cross franchises, like cross universes. Like it's literally to the point that's bringing back old franchises. Like I know it's not the first thing ever to do that sort of thing. Like obviously we have Spider-Verse and the comics, and but I think it was implied that this was gonna happen at some point. And the idea to go to this multiverse angle in the Marvel stuff is like crazy because like there's no real cap on that, and it can lead to like some laziness. But I like to think that they're, for sure they're super on top of the way they view it on like a scientific level or like like the way that you are like a historian, like kind of adjusting timelines and looking at dates and stuff. Like they're so methodically precise with the way that they like interconnect everything that they would have like a good explanation for how they do these cross things. But the thing is that as soon as you introduce this angle of multiple universes and timelines, there is no rules anymore. The only thing that would be consistent is the way that it works to go across those universes. But even then, it's like, and I saw this one meme that kind of like was like some paradox where it's like something along the lines of, like, you can't, something like, oh, what if in this universe there's no time travel, but then there's a universe that there is time travel to go to that universe, and it's like, what are these paradoxes? And I don't even know what I said right there, but I think you might get the basic idea. And again, I'm saying this to myself. I'm not even speaking to anyone right now. These are just my personal notes. This doesn't have to make sense because this is in my own mind. I'm just saying it to myself. I'm not even arguing with anyone right now. I'm not even trying to convince anyone right now because, this is just my personal notes. And I better not see this on the internet. No one better post this on the internet. But yeah, we're just at a crazy state. The fact that we're just this far along, like I remember when I used to theorize about this stuff with my friends like just a few years ago, and it's already like so far, like it's to the point like we're at 4 movies a year and like 3 TV shows. Like I didn't think it would progress. It felt like it moved faster than it was, because like like I still thought it was a big deal when they were doing 2-3 movies, even 3 when they started doing 3 movies a year. I was like, whoa, that's a bit much. How are they gonna do that? But now they're literally like 4 movies and like 4 shows. It's crazy, and yeah, all due respect to the boy Kevin Feige for making that happen. Like, to even have the foresight, I couldn't even imagine like the process of like going about this. Like, it's such a feat. Like, I think people, again, like, it's that thing of people just know what they know already, and whatever's the norm, people are gonna end up hating it. It's just the way of things. You just want what you don't have. But this will be looked back on, no matter how you slice it. Like, the way you look, that we're gonna look back on this is like, whoa, that was a big deal. Like, you guys remember when that first Avengers movie came out? Like, that was a big deal. Like, whether or not you liked it, but it was, I loved it. But when it came out, it was like, who would think that this would be successful? Like, how are you gonna juggle like, what is it, like 3, 4, 5 franchises and make it all cohesive with enough time for everyone to fit on screen? And then that only got harder. And in my opinion, I still would say that the first Avengers movie was like the perfect balance of all of those characters, because there wasn't like over 10, 15 people to show in the movie. Because like now in the Avengers movies, like especially the last two, like Infinity War and Endgame, it's like a billion people and you have to give like the right amount of screen time to each person, right? So that's a whole like art in itself, to be able to write what to prioritize, like that's how it's done well. But there's always trade-offs. I'm going to get into, I'll say spoilers. I'll just say it. Like, I'll say that there is spoilers. So spoilers for everyone that's reading my mind right now or hacking into my computer and watching this. The whole, like, I personally liked the angle of how the Hulk stuff went. I didn't love it. Like, the only, the biggest thing people would say about Endgame is that, like, or one of, is that, we never got to see that rematch with the Hulk. Like, that was a big one. Is that Banner never got to, well, his arc was kind of complete where he became one with the Hulk. But also, I viewed it as, like, I don't know if that's the best solution, because it's like, doesn't that technically kill the Hulk personality? Because, like, the Hulk is understood to be a separate thing in his, like, it's a separate inhabitant of his mind. And he basically killed the Hulk in favor of taking his powers, but, like, or is there something said, like, it never outright says that the Hulk's mind is in him, because, like, he acts the exact same. If anything, if it was, like, a blend, almost like the way She-Hulk is, it would be, he'd have more of, like, an accentuated personality when he's in his Hulk form. But, actually, well, you could say, he seems a little more confident. But bottom line is that we would have liked to see that fight, but that was like the direction they wanted to go with his arc, and it worked for what it was. And I actually liked, like, people downplay the fact that he was the one that did the whole finger snap to bring back everyone. That's people always talk about Tony's sacrifice, but Banner murked his own arm for that. You see that? It looked gross. It looked disgusting after. like imagine waking up and your arm was like that. Like, I might have to just end it all right there, because it's not worth it at that point. But I did see that little preview for the She-Hulk thing, and it looked like he's pretty much healed. So, but he's the Hulk. So that I'm excited for. I really want to see the She-Hulk show, because I'm a big fan of the comics, and I read a few years ago 2 different runs, like the one from the 2000s, the Dan Slott run from the 2000s was like so funny. And the thing with She-Hulk's character, at least traditionally, she's like this, Jennifer Walters is her alter ego, and she's a lawyer, but she's a superhero lawyer. And she, kind of, like, there was like in the comics, there was like this case about, it was like this interesting thing with the Daily Bugle and Spider-Man, like, on trial. Like, I forgot who was suing who, but it was an interesting, funny thing where he had to bring, it was something having to do with Peter Parker, but like Spider-Man, his identity wasn't public, and he had to also be like a defendant or a witness or something. And it's an interesting stuff like that. So I think it's cool, the potential of the sort of new angle to go with a show like that. Like, if they're even gonna, I like to think they would hopefully do cameos of like superheroes, and like, that's a real part of life. You got lawsuits and stuff, especially working in, building a building smashing profession. You gotta have a few little legal disputes here and there. Yeah, Civil War kind of did one angle of that, but I think She-Hulk could do it in like a funny way. Like, I really hope, like, it seems like they're gonna go that angle with the humor. And the thing is that She-Hulk actually predates Deadpool for like, at least my understanding is that for being like fourth wall breaking in Marvel Comics. Like she basically did that in like the 80s before Deadpool was even really a thing. So I don't know if they will do that in the show, but we'll see. Yeah, there's literally so much content now, like online and everywhere. Like I can't keep up. Like someone said to me today, like if I've seen that show You on Netflix, and to me it looked like something like, is it anything like Dexter? I keep asking people that, and I don't bother looking it up because I just I keep thinking that with these big shows I'm just gonna like eventually sit down and just watch it, so I try not to look up spoilers. But I know how that's like one of the biggest shows on Netflix, and I know Victoria Pedretti, I think it is, from Hill House, Haunting a Hill House is in that, and Bly Manor. I really like those shows. Those shows are really good. But that was I was in that mode during October Halloween season. It's interesting how whatever season we're in, we really don't want it. At least in my opinion, I don't really want it to end because I love Halloween and I love Christmas. But like as soon as I'm out of the season of it, like I'm fine. Like I don't wish for it back. That's just me, because I think it's like, oh, it's already done with. Like, might as well just move on. Because yeah, Halloween, I'm like super into that. Like I think I dressed up and went trick or treating until I was like in grade 11, which is pretty late. But free is free, right? If I get first in line in front of those kids, the candy's mine. First come, first serve. What else? There's so much, like, with the Marvel stuff. It's just too... It's sometimes, like... I do kind of feel like, I think a bit after Endgame and then when the shows came out, that it... I could see... Like, I wasn't tired of it, but I started to see that it could start being that. Because, like, I'm always... I feel like as soon as something, like, good comes out, like, I'm immediately, like, back in. But I think people are just quick to say that, like, well, it's not going to get better than Endgame. Like, that's pretty... And, like, to be fair, like, that was the culmination of, like, 10 years of movies, something like that. That, it's fair to say that it will be a while before they do something on that level again. But arguably, like we said, if anything, No Way Home, the new Spider-Man one, is kind of on that level. Yeah. I'm gonna watch back to Lord of the Rings though. I'm gonna watch that in a bit. Maybe I'll watch like the first half of that before I go to bed, because it's about it's 10:21. If we keep this going for another 10-15 minutes or so, I want to make most of the episodes about an hour. I think that's a sweet spot. Like anything within an hour. I had to figure out maybe if any of you listen to this point, meaning people hacking into my computer. I have to figure out the whole like hosting situation. Like I got this hosting Buzzsprout, but I'm trying to figure out about like the best, because like I never done a podcast before. But there's like this whole thing about like, are you supposed, like, is that normal? Like, are you supposed to pay for the service to be able to upload these things, like these episodes? Because like on YouTube, obviously I just put it, but like to put it on Spotify, I had to put it through this hosting thing, and I have to see again on the Spotify thing about all that. But yeah, just more technical behind the scenes jargon for you. You guys get a little peek into my my daily mind. I love this gig. I love the podcast gig because I said this on the first one. I don't have to, like, honestly, it's less work for me to do this than it is for me to do the skits. And it's almost like the polar opposite. And I have heard a few things about some feedback from friends of mine about like I was a little too loose on the last one, in the sense of like in that first one, and even now, like this one's a little more structured, the slightest bit more structured, where I had a topic. But last time I literally jumped into it without the last two, I can attest that I literally went into those without any intent of having subject matter to talk about. And I wanted to test myself to see how I could fare just walking in without material and just seeing how that goes. And I filled up the hour, so I'm pretty sure there wasn't that long of a time of me not talking. So yeah. But did I mention at the beginning of this that yesterday I tried to do a podcast? Oh, I was so out of it yesterday. Like, I meant to record this one yesterday, okay? But I was, like, so drained from work and just, like, so wiped. And it was, like, after midnight. And it was one of those things where, like, there's certain things you want to do in a day to feel satisfied with your day. For me, part of that is working on anything related to the channel. So whether it's skits on some level, like writing, shooting, editing, like anything to do with the skits, or now podcasts, or I'm gonna come back to the stream, guys. Don't give up on me. I'm coming back to the stream at some point. I still mean to. It's just, I'm just trying to get into my groove now. Like, I've been at my new job for a few months, trying to just fit in everything, like, because you got a whole day. Imagine you got like an 8-9 hour day, give or take. You got some personal life. You want to chill a bit, family, friends. You want to walk the dog. You got some days you got that daily commute. I commute only twice a week, so it's not that bad. But it definitely eats out a bit of the day. And I always want to fill up some time doing something productive. And like yesterday, it was one of those days that just, like, it was productive, but it just felt long, and it took a toll. And when I wanted to do the podcast, I was just so out of it. I think I started it like 3-4 times before calling it quits, and like, I'm just gonna do it tomorrow. Like, I like, each time I restarted, I think I talked for like, I think literally 5 minutes too, but it wasn't going anywhere. Yeah, there is we are just human. Well, not me. I'm just trying to make myself seem relatable by pretending I have flaws, but I really am perfect. Yes. And for all of you that may have seen my new video, respect at this point, I put up a community post about it. Check out that new video. I put one. Like, on Earth, I mentioned it in the post, but it is about 1,700 people on Earth watched my video, which is correct me if I'm wrong, the total population of the world. So, if you happen to be one of those people that either is from another galaxy, another universe, another timeline, that happen to hop into ours, because, the population, I can confirm as of now, is 1,700 people. And, being that 1,701st person is a big deal. So if you want to, check out that video and see what you're missing out on. See what us weirdos on Earth are up to. So, yeah. What else do we have coming up? What are some things to look forward to besides the holiday season? Well, Christmas is a big deal. I want to watch... You know what? Every time I'm in either the Christmas or holiday... Like, specifically Christmas and Halloween time, like October and December, I really like doing festive stuff related to that. Like, for Halloween, it's watching scary movies. Christmas, watching Christmas movies. Listening to Halloween or scary music in October. Listening to Christmas music. Oh, and this is another thing. I don't know if I brought this up on the last one, but this was a random topic I had, which was, do you listen to Christmas music outside of December? I know that there's that big meme and stuff, like, and just like, it's kind of a universal thing that people kind of hate when you play Christmas music before, like, even November. I think November is like, it kind of starts late November, like 3rd, 4th week of November, even before, depending on where you are. But the thing is, I know that in the States too, they, we're in Canada world, in the polar bear place, where we have Thanksgiving early in October. It's actually before Halloween. So in the States, they have Black Friday and Thanksgiving earlier, like what is it for you guys in the States? Like that's like, what was that, like 3 weeks ago now, something like that? 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So I guess like celebrating Christmas, because you still have that one landmark tradition in between. So if I understand how it feels wrong, but I think some people still kind of have the sleepover view. Thanksgiving, it's already almost Christmas time and stuff. Same general idea, it's cold weather. You got the family gatherings. It's very similar in that sense, depending on your personal traditions. But the thing with Christmas music that I like, I don't know. I was always of the mind that I think, and I know that the real PTSD people get for Christmas is probably, it's like it is a hectic time of year, and I see why people don't like it in that sense, or like don't want to hear, like, I think, let's say you work retail or you work somewhere, and or you just hear Christmas music everywhere, and then I guess people associate it with the stress of Christmas shopping or just holiday festivities, because there's just general hecticness end of year, just how it is across the board. And I think it's because, maybe it's my childhood kiddiness that is just oblivious to all that I retained that mentality of like viewing Christmas fondly. Because, as a kid, I didn't have a job. I didn't have to pay for nothing. I just got the gifts. So, I always viewed it as like a plus. And, I always liked going to the mall in Christmas time, seeing all the decorations. I kind of, maybe I should do that. Maybe I'll do that. Like, I just kind of spoke that out loud. I always liked doing that. Like, because I think as I got older and I earned my own money, like, I stopped caring about shopping. That's where, you become stingy once it comes down to spending your own money. But I used to be like a mall rat, like in high school and stuff, and I would go, like, I love just being at the mall. And I used to go to, if you're in Mississauga, Square One all the time. And that was like, like that high school thing. But I would see movies every week at the theater there. There's two theaters, actually. There were two theaters at that mall. One across and one inside the mall. And then when I was a kid, I also lived in Toronto, downtown, and I'd go to like Eaton Center with my mom like multiple times a week. So like I always grew up like going to the mall, and it was just always a fond thing. And then Christmas time, it just accentuated that. So I kind of retained that like aspect of it. But I think as I get older, not to try and say I'm becoming cynical, but you kind of subconsciously, some people do. I try to not, but sometimes I do. That you start to see, like, real life gets you down. Real life gets to you. So, you kind of have to, I think it just comes down to, we're in this moment now. Appreciate the time that you have, with family, friends during the holiday season. When you get those opportunities to hang out with friends and family, assuming you've been, productive enough, take those opportunities. Take that time for you to chill. Because it's a hectic time. There's a lot. It's still going. There's still a few weeks, Some people are off for school. I think the people start Christmas vacation next week, I think, if you're in school. I haven't been in school in years. Yeah, it's been about 3 years since I've been in school. Just work for me. But my thing with, like, winter vacation, unless I make a specific plan, I don't care about getting the whole winter break off. I feel like that's almost too much time off. I like having, honestly, like, if I can get Christmas Eve, or my thing too is even if it's New Year's, like, I don't even mind working on the day as long as, like, I'm done early enough in the day to partake in the festivities. So, like, New Year's, I don't actually mind. And if you work with me, don't take this with a grain of salt. That when I've worked at jobs before, and I worked, like, I would typically say it's fine to work. I'd rather work New Year's Eve than Christmas Eve, because New Year's Eve, the festivities don't start until after 6 or 7 anyways. So if it's Christmas, you got Christmas, again, this is based on your tradition, but in my house, we would have like, we have like an event on Christmas Eve, like some family over and stuff. And I just want to be there for that. But it usually doesn't start till like, after 7. But I think the Christmas one, it does start earlier. I literally said the same times for both. But in general, Christmas Eve for me starts a little earlier in the day. So I don't even like, it's more if I know my family has time off, I'll want to, like book specific days to hang out with friends or family, like, just whenever there's free time. That's why, like, these days, the weekends, I like try to capitalize on my weekends now. I have this weird balance of like, and I see now the argument that people have of like just chilling, relaxing, catching up on sleep, or partying, and not necessarily partying, but like, doing things. Because I like both. Like, I want to get my rest, but I also want to do stuff. Because if I just sleep all weekend and then I just go to the next week, like, I feel like I won't be as satisfied with what I did. You gotta make those memories. You gotta make every moment last. Because I feel like I sometimes get in this state where I get too hung up on what I'm doing. I get this tunnel vision for my projects and goals, because I do find that I'm very goal oriented, but I sometimes let that get in the way of like being in the moment. So I'll sometimes like passively go on my phone even to act like, but like the thing with the phone is that it's the worst. So that's a whole other talk. You just spend so much time on your phone. Have I talked about that on the last podcast already? I don't even remember. You guys got to remind me what I haven't talked about. But, you guys meaning myself. And when I watch this back, I'll have to give myself some feedback, because we know no one's going to watch this. This is only, once again, as mentioned, a personal voice memo that happens to be on video that I, for whatever reason, I'm filming on a green screen with a little drink as if it's like I'm performing for someone, but I really am not. This is just my diary. This is what I do view this as. This podcast is kind of like my weekly diary of like checking in on like what I'm thinking about at any given moment. That's kind of, I said that on the first podcast, I think, too, about the skits, where it is kind of like a documentation of like my life in some way. In a very broad sense for the skits, because obviously, like I said before, like they're not based on a specific, they're not always based on a specific thing, like a specific memory or moment. They're sometimes inspired by it. So yeah. A lot of good content on the way, guys. I got a lot of video ideas. There's honestly like, I sometimes get bogged down by too many ideas, where like I'll write down all the ideas I have like at any given moment in a note. I'll expand on them. Sometimes they'll end up just sitting there, and then I either forget about them and I have like notes scattered all over the place. And then, as I've mentioned before, I kind of reference my sacred text, the Google Doc, which has like every skit I wrote. And I'll sometimes like just keep them in there, and I sometimes like might forget about it, but I'll either get caught up in a new one, or I'll end up going to an old skit and end up doing that idea that I had sitting in the pot. So honestly, that's why you got to write down all your ideas. Always write down your thoughts when you have a chance, because you might forget about it, and then if you see that note later, like, oh, if it was something that might inspire you for something later, then yeah, go for it. Especially if you're in like a creative field, I think it's good to write down your thoughts. It's just, I think the best creative stuff comes from your own experience and reference point, because how can you speak on something else that you don't know? That's what makes me appreciate sci-fi writers, like people that can just fully conjure up a world that does not exist, but like there's elements of it taken from their life and like their own frame of reference and experience. So when you got like fantasy writers, like just like to be like someone like a J.R.R. Tolkien or like a George Lucas or something, and just to think of these things is just crazy. And you know what? It's definitely worth, when you look back on those things and you watch them and then you watch them again and then you watch all the remakes of them, you end up being nostalgic for the old thing, And yeah, bottom line of this whole thing, this whole voice memo, is that Lord of the Rings is goated. That's all we're trying to say here. And yeah, Star Wars is goated too. I'm gonna save it for the next podcast, because I literally just remembered how I watched Ghostbusters Afterlife as well, and I'll get into that on the next one probably. But yeah, let me know if what you guys meaning again myself, when I watch this, I'll watch this back and see what I think of this podcast. And this is primarily probably the most movie focused podcast that I have had in a while. In a while, meaning all three. And I probably talked about movies at some brief length at the other two. But guys, we just hit the hour mark. I think that's you know what time it is. It's time to go, and I don't really have a set framework on this. I just feel like it's a sweet spot when it hits an hour. Whoa, he podcasted for a whole hour, and that's what we like. But let me know in the comments if there's anything you guys would want me to talk about, any topics that you'd want me to touch on. Knowing what I've you kind of seen me gone in length about my interest in movies and stuff like that. So, I'm really into music too. I'm into like all sorts of stuff. All sorts of stuff. All sorts of topics. I kind of wanted to get into one about like ghosts and paranormal activities. That should be a franchise. But yeah, we'll save that. We'll save all these great topics, maybe in the Ghostbusters one. Rather fitting. But at that point, guys, it's a pleasure. Always good to see me on my webcam and look at myself. Guys meaning me in my reflection. So I'll see me later. And for anyone that's hacking this computer, let me know what you think. And I'm not posting this. See you around.